Thursday Night Tailgate, where the spotlight is always on the positive. Tune in Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time to hear your favorite NFL legends, players, and coaches sharing their stories. Now back to Chris and Bob.
I wouldn't joke about anything else that happens here tonight.
All right, now joining us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is one of the greatest third basemen of all time, and that's Bill Madlock. Bob, you know, as you know, I grew up a Pirates fan, idolizing so many of the guys who played on those 70s Pirates team. I wasn't really old enough to remember watching the 71 series. I was only 6 at the time, but I know my family was glued to it. They were glued to it in 1960. But I'm telling you, through the middle 70s and the late 70s, I was there at Three River Stadium every summer watching those guys. I remember when Bill Madlock, and I mentioned this at the top of the show, when Madlock got traded to the Pirates from the Giants. And, he'd already won a couple of batting titles with the Cubs at that point. I remember my father saying to me, he must have a couple of broken legs, because why else would the Giants trade a great hitter like Bill Madlock? Well, he came in, hit .328 the rest of that season with the Pirates, went on to help them win that World Series. Bill played in the major leagues from 73 to 87. He has a .305 career batting average and a .365 on-base percentage. Almost exactly the same in the postseason. Hit .308 with a .375 OBP. And I encourage everyone, go out on Baseball Reference and take a look at how incredibly consistent Bill Madlock was. It didn't matter where he hit in the lineup, what ballpark he was playing in, how many outs there were at the time when he got up. He hit north of 300 and had an on-base percentage over .350 in every place he played, in every stadium he played in, no matter where it was. He won 4 batting titles over the course of his career, a 3-time All-Star, was the All-Star Game MVP in 1975, and I am as thrilled as I could possibly be to welcome him to Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Bill, Chris and Bob here. Thanks for coming on the show.
Welcome, Bill.
Oh, it's a pleasure being with you guys this evening.
Bill, I want to start our time. I know we don't have a lot of it with you, but I got to go back to when you got traded to the Pirates. I'm from Pittsburgh, a huge Pirates fan. And we all couldn't believe
that the Pirates fan? You still a Pirate fan?
I'm still a Pirate fan. I'm also a Red Sox fan because, you got a supplement, right? We haven't had a whole lot to cheer about in Pittsburgh in years. But, boy, it was a huge thrill to get you over to the Pirates. How did that come about? And what did you think when the Giants traded you over to Pittsburgh?
Well, if you know, back there we played at Candlestick, and Candlestick might have been the worst ballpark to play in with the weather and the turf and the dirt flying over the place. So I was fortunate to go from a last place team to pennant contender and eventually won the World Series. Because we had a great team with Stargell, Parker, Gardner, Blyleven, Hall of Fame. So it was a dream come true.
Willie Stargell was my baseball hero growing up, Bill. And I was curious to get your thoughts of Willie and what it was like being in the clubhouse with him.
Well, it was just unbelievable. You had Willie, our quiet leader, and then you had Big Dave, he let everybody know what he's going to do, then go out there on the field and do it. So, two great players.
And Chuck Tanner as a manager and a coach, he seemed like a pretty upbeat, positive sort of guy. What was it like playing for Chuck?
Well, it was unbelievable. I played for some great managers. I played for Billy Martin. I played for Tommy Lasorda, Sparky Anderson. My first manager was Ted Williams, but I would choose Chuck over all of them. He was an upbeat, smart manager, and they let you go out and play.
And Bill, you mentioned that 79 series, and you guys come back from a 3-1 deficit against the Orioles, a team that won 102 games during the season. They had a great lineup, they had a great pitching staff. Mike Flanagan won 23 games that year. Plus they had Jim Palmer, Scott McGregor, Dennis Martinez. And you guys go out there, you're down 3-1, you throw Jim Rooker in Game 5. Talk about what it was like coming back from that 3-1 deficit and having to go out and win that Game 5 with a guy that, wasn't a household name as a starting pitcher.
Well, that was a shocker right there, that fifth game, because we were pitch dead. We didn't have nobody, and Rooker pitched a game of his life right there. So we won that, and then we just continued with the momentum, and went to Baltimore and won 2 straight there.
And you guys, against that pitching staff, Bill, you guys hit .323 as a team. in the World Series against that staff. How did you guys pull that off?
Well, like we were talking about, we were so used to facing, Tom Seaver, Kuzma, Carlton. So, those pitchers are great pitchers on Baltimore staff, but I don't think there's anything like the pitchers we faced throughout the season in the National League.
Bob, questions for Bill?
Bill, it's an honor to speak with you. I always marvel at your hitting. And about the Chicago days, the 3 years spent in Chicago, Bill, I mean, those were the day games back in Chicago, and you won consecutive batting titles at Wrigley Field. Talk about hitting there, and if the day games did catch up to Cubs players back in those days.
Well, we were bad either way. It could be a day game, night game. We stunk as a team. We didn't have a good team back then. But it was fun playing day games, because I talked to, Billy and Fergie and stuff. She said when they were in the pennant race, they really got tired with Sano and all those guys. They said he just ran out of gas at the end of the season. Had nothing to do with the Black Cat.
And Bill, Chris and I marvel at the game today, not in a good way. As far as the strikeouts, I think today is the 12th consecutive year where they broke strikeout records. That's one thing you didn't do. I think your high ever was 53, and that was when you were well into your 30s. Your strikeout totals were so minuscule. Is that something you were very, very cognizant of and conscious of, or is the game just played so much differently now that it seemed that you took pride in it back then?
Yeah, it was just, the same thing. It was unbelievable way it is now, because they don't care about striking out. They just swing. I took pride in putting the ball in play, and most of the players back there did that. They put pride into it, because they wanted to put the ball in play. They didn't want to strike out. And right now, these kids don't care anything about striking out. They can strike out 10 times, hit one home run, they're satisfied.
Bill, one more before we let you go, and you're doing some coaching now. Talk about, catch us up. What's going on with you now?
Well, we have a batting cage here in Las Vegas. I teach private hitting, then I travel all over the country teaching that at the Vegas Batter's Box in Las Vegas, working with kids, working with girls. I had a couple of girls that got a full ride to Kentucky. They got a full ride to Montana, and it's just fun to work with them and seeing the results over the years to practice with them.
Well, Bill, there's 100 questions that Bob and I would love to ask you. I hope we get the opportunity to catch up with you again sometime. It's a thrill to have you as part of the show tonight.
Okay, I really enjoyed being a part of it. Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Take care.
Okay, you guys have a good one. Okay, bye bye.
That's the great Bill Madlock, and now it was a quick in and out, Bob. But you want to talk about a guy who is a great hitter, and you talked about this at the top of the show. He's the only player to win 4 batting titles not in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but a guy, just like you just said, put the ball in play. There's not a lot of that going on in the major leagues nowadays. They're either going back and sitting on the bench after having swung 3 times and missed, or they're rounding the bases because they hit a home run. You've been doing a sort of a Mendoza line count, right? This summer. So there's a lot of that swing and missing, and not a whole lot of putting the ball in play anymore.
When he was winning batting titles, Chris, I mean, get this. I mean, he was below 50 strikeouts when he's winning batting titles. I mean, in 1976, he hit .339, struck out 27 times. The year before, .354 with a batting title, struck out 34 times. This is almost unheard of. And what's keeping him out of the Hall of Fame, Chris? He didn't strike out, but he didn't walk much either. So if you're going to look at his, his on-base percentage and things like that, they're going to be lower. And of course, he had some injuries later in his career, and it's just over 2,000 hits. But make no mistake about it. And I talked again during the week, brought his name up, and people told me he wasn't a good hitter. He was a great hitter. And those 4 batting titles in the National League were so solid. And had a very short swing, Chris. You remember he choked up on the bat.
Yep.
Old school type player, but my goodness, hit line drives.
Yeah, and as he mentioned, he played for Ted Williams. He was originally drafted by the Washington Senators, then Washington Senators, right? Became the Texas Rangers. But you go back and you look at the beginning of his major league career, drafted by the Senators, right? It goes to Texas. After the 73 season, he was traded to the Cubs along with Vic Harris in exchange for Fergie Jenkins. Oh, by the way. Then he gets to Chicago, and he's the guy who replaces Ron Santo at third base. So he gets traded for a Hall of Fame pitcher, and he goes and he replaces a Hall of Fame third baseman in Chicago, and then becomes what, you could argue a Hall of Famer himself. Should be. So at least should be in the conversation. And what a great player. And so I hope, Bob, we get another opportunity to get him back on the show.
Oh, I hope so. We have a ton more questions. This is a guy, again, his last year, people forget he came over finally to the American League and played 87 games for the Tigers. Hit like 280, Chris. It's not like this guy went out totally shot. I mean, he was still a very good hitter, even at an advanced age. But yeah, again, whoever remembers him in his prime, and I remember watching those day games, especially on the Met telecasts when he was playing at Wrigley Field with the pinstripes. He had the short pants on, the high socks. It was great fun to watch. Great hitter.
Yes, he was. All right, we've got the Hall of Famer Bo Bach hanging on the line. We're going to get to Bo on the other side of this real quick station break.